Alrighty, folks, welcome. We are glad to be here with you at the Aurora Institute presentation. Let's do some introductions and then we'll get into kind of the heart of what we're doing here. I'm Matt Freed. I'm currently an elementary school principal at the Eastern New York School District at Canadockley Elementary. I've been in education for a while. Most of my teaching experience was at the secondary level. And then when I started making my transition into admin, I have like middle school and elementary school experience. So this is my third year at Canadockley, and things have been going pretty well for me so far. Josh, you want to say hi?
Yep, my name is Josh Korb, and I'm a former Eastern New York employee. I just made the switch to Bermudian Springs School District, not that too far from my original home district. I'm now the Director of Innovation here, so I do a little bit of everything from curriculum to technology to, again, everything under the sun. But I've been in education for a number of years and looking forward to sharing what we've done at Eastern and continue to do at other districts around the nation.
And I'm Nicole Curcio. I am the Technology Innovation Specialist at Eastern New York School District. It's a new position for me this year. I just moved out of the first grade classroom to step into this role. So my experience has been in the elementary world, but this year I've already been spending a lot of time in middle school and high school classrooms, kind of learning the ways there. So I'm very excited to share what we've been doing here at Eastern.
All right, so let's kind of introduce you a little bit to our district and what we're about here. So when we're thinking about Eastern New York School District, we start out with our instructional model, which I'm going to get into a little bit more detail. And then we have these other kind of little badgy things that are flying outside the pieces of the shield. And all these puzzle pieces kind of come together and coalesce into our district's vision and mission. So for the Eastern New York School District, I'm looking at, over here, we have the instructional model to our left. Most of our presentation today is going to be centered around that. We have these four pieces that fit together. We're not going to go through all of those in detail, but we are going to touch on three of those that are pertinent to our talk today, which really is about empowering our learners. On the right-hand side, we have our skills and our dispositions. This is part of our portrait of a graduate. So many of your districts might have undergone a similar process where you had some maybe stakeholders throughout the community, throughout your schools that contributed to trying to determine what are the main skills and dispositions and qualities that you want graduates from your school to leave with. That's kind of where that part fits in. And then we looked at our instructional model and our skills and dispositions, and we kind of revised, renewed our mission and our vision statements that you see on there on the screen. So as we kind of work through things today, we're going to start out with our pedagogies of deep learning. We're going to hit a couple more of these. So I'm actually going to turn things over to Josh. He's going to talk a little bit more about this first section.
Yeah, so under the pedagogies of deep learning, we hope to convey the importance of combining research-based practices and modern teaching and learning practices to reach the needs of all students. And this was ultimately to create a district-wide learning environment that we're going to talk about a little bit later that fosters creativity, problem solving, and innovative thinking. So we take that a little bit further and we dive into this pedagogies of deep learning and we break it down into different categories. And when looking at this particular piece of the instructional model, we want to highlight that is as we build our teacher capacity to become facilitators of the educational process, we also have to reimagine what education and professional development looks for them. Our teachers are our most valuable asset when it comes to education and transforming teaching and learning for our students. So why not invest in their practices and in their overall education experience as learners? So with that in mind, we also want to recognize that we build our students' ability to become lifelong learners, to become self-motivated learners by doing the same for our teachers. So we can do this by providing them with clear aligned mastery-based targets that, again, we'll talk about a little bit later, but let's focus really on what we're doing for our teachers to build their capacity to be instructional leaders within our learning community. So we're fortunate to have some of the best educators at Eastern as our modern learning architects, a program that we just started the past 3 or 4 years. You're going to hear a little bit more from one of our front runners of this movement towards modern learning architects. And these individuals are our boots on the ground. They're our most innovative teachers. They're constantly exemplifying what we want teaching to look like and feel like in the classroom, and all the skills and traits that we want them to embody. And in order to build the skills necessary to be forward-thinking and future-proofing in their classrooms, we need to first enhance the way in which they learn. So enhance the way in which our modern learning architects perform and learn as a team. So we developed a set of look-fors and a set of traits and characteristics that you see some on the screen. But what I'm going to do here in just a moment is I'm going to turn it over to Nicole Curcio on the next slide, not just yet, but she's going to explain that she was one of the modern learning architects. You're going to get a peek at her classroom. But one additional thing that we did for our teachers was build out a teaching professional learning platform that allowed them to not only self-reflect, but also explore different areas that they could improve their teaching practices in that aligned with our district visions and goals. So this is just one step that we're trying to take to modernize learning at scale, because teachers can have one spot now that they go, that they can find all the resources and materials that they need to continuously reflect and improve their practice as a classroom instructional leader. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to transfer or transition now to talking a little bit about what the overall goals and feels are for the district for our modern learning architects. And before we do that, we're going to open up to a quick little video of Nicole's classroom. And she was actually nominated as Classroom of the Year at the 2022 NCDC, which is the National Council for Digital Convergence Conference. And you're going to see why in just a few moments.
My name is Nicole Curcio, and I have been teaching at Wrightsville Elementary for the past 6 years. My personalized learning journey started in a 5th grade writing classroom. Specifically, student choice drove interest in all our projects. While learning about the 3 forms of writing, students were given choice in their topics and how to present their evidence of learning. Using roadmaps and learning plans, students were able to move at their own pace and track their progress through learning different grammatical concepts. This allowed time to conference one-on-one with each student about their writing. In this way, the students were excited to write about and share what they were learning with their peers. This year in 1st grade, I've adapted and implemented many of the same strategies. The vision and code have been essential to the culture of our classroom, allowing students to share in ownership of our learning environment. Overall, this has positively impacted how our students collaborate with others, work independently, and self-reflect. Station rotations have played a central role in the success of student-centered learning. Through choice boards and learning plans, our centers are individualized to allow for student input, to foster student success, and to provide support for students to learn from and through their mistakes. Classroom engagement soars when students are given the opportunity to select how they will display their learning. Through the use of pre-assessments and observations, students are placed in groups to receive differentiated instruction. Small group lessons and station activities are adapted daily to meet the specific needs of the students through the use of detailed learner profiles. This easily gives me the opportunity to work closely with students who might not have mastered a skill yet, and to enrich students who are ready to take their learning to the next level. Personalized learning in the classroom has demonstrated great success, both academically and socially. Our students have developed a newfound enthusiasm for their school attendance and their learning. It has truly been rewarding to see their excitement to come to school.
Oh, there it is. And, yeah, startling. In the flesh, here we have Nicole Curcio. How you doing, Nicole?
I'm doing really well. So just to talk a little bit of my experience through the Modern Learning Architect program, a select group of teachers were pulled to be able to discuss and meet regularly to talk about ways that we can be modernizing our learning at scale. So this was a group of teachers who were either volunteered themselves or were strongly encouraged to look into being a part of this program, to start really looking at ways that we can modernize learning at scale in our district. So we were the people who are okay to fail forward. So a lot of mistakes happened to get on the road to get there, but my students in the end were really able to show us so much autonomy in the classroom. I had students who within the last couple of months of school were able to look at a standard, and we would break down a standard together, and they could rate themselves on a scale of a 1 to 4 of where they were on that standard, and what exactly they needed to do, both themselves or collaboratively, or what they needed from me as the teacher to help them succeed and get where they needed to be to show mastery, which was so awesome to see in the classroom, especially with 1st graders. So that MLA Learning Lab was just that, a lab where we could test and try new things. So when we were trying to implement learning plans, we had one type that we were using, a Google Doc that we were all using as a district, which was great to have everybody using the same thing, but we found it wasn't working in everyone's classrooms. And so that learning lab created a slide deck that we were able to use to kind of like individualize that learning. So there was a lot of other people involved in this process. So we have another video to share for you to kind of show you a little bit more of what some of our other modern learning architects also were able to do in the classroom.
In order for our students to learn to the edges, our teachers must be able and willing to teach to the edges. The primary focus of our professional development over the past 3 years has been modernizing teaching and learning at scale to transform classrooms and instructional spaces into interactive, motivational, and differentiated learning hubs where students can strive for success in whatever learning path they choose. A few of our teachers were selected in the beginning of our journey to lead the way towards the future of Eastern New York School District. Innovative and resilient staff members at Eastern New York School District and have band together to bring student choice and modern practices to fruition. I would like to now introduce you to the Modern Learning Architect program.
I chose to be a modern learning architect to collaborate with others to create innovative ways to give students choice within the classroom, along with give students a voice within the shared vision, classroom code, and standard operating procedure.
I wanted to become a modern learning architect because I wanted to continue to grow as an educator and learn new instructional strategies to use in my classroom. I also like to be able to easily collaborate with other teachers across the district through our modern learning architect learning labs. By developing learning plans, I am able to give my students the opportunity to take ownership of their learning and have choice in the classroom.
I chose to be a modern learning architect to stay up to date on new trends in education and to learn ways to better meet the needs of my students. I've enjoyed collaborating with colleagues on ideas that work well and working with them to find new ways to solve problems.
I chose to be a modern learning architect to learn new instructional strategies. I've enjoyed creating a vision and code for my classroom where the students have a voice.
I chose to be a modern learning architect because I wanted to have a voice in modernizing our school district. I wanted the opportunity to learn and help develop ways to enhance student learning and engagement at a more individualized level and pace. I've enjoyed learning the importance of using a shared vision and conversing with others regarding their shared vision and how they may differ in the classroom depending on subject area, grade level, or even just the overall dynamics of classroom.
I became a modern learning architect in order to collaborate together with others and understand how to implement innovative, student-centered, best teaching practices within my own classroom. I've enjoyed the opportunity to meet together on a regular basis with teachers and administrators, discuss the new ideas, discuss what works, and also share our struggles with each other and successes. It's helped me to own, personalize, and adapt the new strategies within my own classroom. And also, I've enjoyed the opportunity to develop our classroom vision, classroom code, and to have the students use learning plans within my classroom just a little bit more. My name is Brenda Lockman.
My name is Stacy Groff.
My name is Steph Hagee.
My name is Megan Tilley.
I am Jackie Hill.
I am Malia Bertoli, and I am a modern learning architect.
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 All right, so previously I had mentioned that we wanted to provide our students with the opportunity to explore and master their content at their own pace. So that was sort of the overall goal for us. So we talked a little bit about how we wanted to provide that training for our teachers. Now we're going to dive into what does the modern learning environment look like. We've talked about modern learning architects, what our teachers look like and sound like and feel like in the classroom. So what does our actual classroom space look like? What do our online spaces look like? So this can only be achieved by providing students with equitable access to materials and resources across the entire district. So we wanted to make sure that that was evident as we move forward with our planning and structure for the district as a whole. So, but first and foremost, I have to point out that technology can oftentimes become sort of the focal point of a digital ecosystem, but it's not about, but it's also about creating a flexible physical and digital space that can easily adapt to changing landscapes. So we all are aware that something happened in March of 2020. Not sure what, but something happened that we needed to quickly adjust on the fly. And if we didn't have a flexible digital space that we could merge or that we could shift to quickly, and then in the subsequent months that happened after that, we wouldn't have had an online space or any space for our students to convene or grab resources from or interact with their teachers with. So we wanted to make sure that we could lay a substantial groundwork that we could ultimately offer opportunities that promote ownership and empowerment for not only our teachers, but our students who are the ultimate purveyors of the knowledge that we bestow upon them. So we took that and we sort of looked at a couple different components. Just to give you a little bit of background, we are one-to-one with Chromebooks from K to 12. We have internet access for all. So even those students who are in remote areas, we are a sort of a rural district. So those students have hotspots we were able to give to them during the pandemic. And continuing to do that to this day. And then we ultimately created this learning portal, which is our online flexible digital space that housed a lot of our online content in regards to our communication regarding COVID protocols. And then once we sort of got, I don't want to say got past that, but once we started evolving and going beyond that, we started housing learning plans there, classroom spaces that were online for teachers to be able to post their content, links and resources for parents. It really became this a great
Oh, we lost Josh there for a moment. I know he was having some connectivity issues this morning.
efforts to
there he
make
is.
sure.
Sorry, go ahead. You're good.
Okay,
You cut out for a
good.
second. I was going to pick up the slack. Yep.
All right. So in every effort, we're trying to redesign and make sure that access and equity are at the forefront of our planning. So there, on this slide here, we have a couple of the ways in which we are providing that access and equity to our students. So you can feel free to read that. You'll have access to this entire presentation. I did want to make note, somebody in the chat did say that there was some audio issues when you're reviewing the videos. We do have all of these videos posted onto YouTube, and we'll make sure that those links are shared with you as well. So you have access to any video that you end up seeing that's embedded throughout this presentation. You'll have access to that to view it at any time. There is the link to the presentation once again in the chat. So thank you for doing that. So just moving along, we realized early that our teachers need to be aware of some of the resources that we have. In the position that I'm in currently, the new position that I took on, part of my job is technology director. So it was very eye-opening to me to really see that there are a lot of resources that are out there that our teachers don't know about. Or there are a lot of resources that we may pay for as a district that not all teachers are being aware of. So we ended up developing a technology inventory to go along with this brand new site that's called the Edge Technology Innovation Hub, which housed a ton of resources for teachers, a ton of content, a ton of online apps and applications for teachers to use in the classroom, for parents to use at home, to really build up and beef up our digital ecosystem to give the best possible outcome or an opportunity for our students in and out of the classroom. And that really brings us to our learning infrastructure. So you're going to see two branches here. One is going to be for teachers, which is going to be our instructional portal. And then the other side is going to be for students, which is our learning portal. So we branded it that way to try and make it distinguishable for our students and teachers to automatically go here from the very beginning, the onset of the pandemic, and then into the future. So this carries us to this day. On the right, you'll see for the teachers, this is a searchable directory for all teacher related items. So whether that's resources related to their classes or professional development opportunities or evaluation materials, which you'll see here on the screen, curriculum, all of these things are identified here for teachers to be able to expand in their professional learning opportunities. And then on the other side, sort of the flip side of all of this is going to be the learning portal. And this learning portal gives us the opportunity to bring something forward for our parents, our students to really grasp onto and have a connection to amidst any kind of flexible arrangement that might be going on throughout the school day. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Nicole once again to talk about what students have access to and how we're trying to increase our overall efficacy when it comes to communication.
So as a district, we started creating these learning plans, and those were where we were housing all of the curriculum that students were using, and they were giving our students autonomy in the classroom because they had the option to work on these. So their path, their time, their place, and their pace was all unlocked with these learning plans and how they were able to really do what they wanted to with their learning and move at the pace that best suited them. So while we're creating these learning plans, we realized as a district that there's a lot of these that we're making, and our Google Drives got to be a bit cluttered and it was a little disorganized because we'd have teachers in different buildings making learning plans and there wasn't a lot of communication and connection. And so we just figured out we needed to streamline it all so it could all be in one place. So we created the learning plan database, which was this sheet that we had. We would fill out a Google form and we would submit our learning plan, and it could go through an approval process with our administration and curriculum teams to make sure that all teachers were using the same learning plans and that we all had access to each other's work. So this database is really great because you could search by grade level or department or course. So maybe a teacher in a different class at a different grade level, like a third grade teacher created a learning plan and you wanted to make sure you weren't using the same activities when you talked about a very similar concept in fourth grade. And so you could review that teacher's learning plan just to kind of see how you could bump that up for your students, which is really awesome that we had access to this. And we created over 400 learning plans in a little under a year, which is incredible to think about. And so we were able to house all of that on our instructional portal, which is still being used and updated now today for our teachers to be able to have access to those things. But we didn't want students and families to have access necessarily to those physical learning plans. We needed something that was more parent-student friendly, and that's where the learning portal came in. So our learning portal allowed our families and our students to have access to these things in a way that made sense for them, using student-friendly language, navigation that made more sense. We created Bitmoji classrooms for all of our teachers that were launching pads that allowed parents to be able to see what was going on in the classroom from there. Everything was linked. So if a student did have to be home for whether it was COVID or some other reason they needed to go remote for instruction, all of the information they would need would be there for those students to use. So our learning portal is what allowed us to have the opportunity to take what we were doing in our classrooms and make it still work at home for students and parents. On that note, there's a lovely young lady here named Courtney who's going to share a little bit of how we use these learning portals to have students kind of move through their own instruction at their own pace.
I'm here with my friend Courtney. Courtney, can you say hello? Hi. Courtney, can you show in your yellow folder which roadmap you're working on? I'm here. Number 6. And can you point to the word you chose? You practice it in the room. Okay. Who made the choice of which word to practice today? What happens when you know the word go?
When I know the word go, I move on. I take the highlighted tape and put it up to a different word I don't know.
And what does Mr. Young do when you know the word?
Mr. Young stamps it.
Okay. Now, can you show on your Chromebook how you practice the word go? Would you explain it to us?
the word go, I click the list that I on, which is a light bulb that shines, kind of. And then I see my name over in the corner, and it's not really showing up, but I click that square. Anything on that, I click that. And then I go to the one I'm practicing, and I click the video.
Who makes all the choices?
Me.
Thank you, Courtney. You're awesome.
Yeah, so Courtney became somewhat of a celebrity here at Eastern. I know that video was shown at our district-wide opening. It's been posted online, and I told Courtney probably about a half an hour before this presentation that we'd be showing her video again, because it really does, I think, drive the point home that, you know, even at the earliest stages, you know, in kindergarten, that we're able to start turning over some ownership of learning to our kids. So that's a great example of how that looks. So our next component then of our instructional model deals with relevant curriculum and authentic assessment. And that's where the name suggests we focus on cognitively complex learning experiences that are appropriate, purposeful, and frequently assessed to promote understanding. And here are some of the kind of main characteristics that we're looking for when we worked with our curriculum leadership team. What are the main areas for relevant curriculum and authentic assessment? This is what we came up with. And these aren't, you know, necessarily new, relevant, guaranteed, viable curriculum, authentic, varied, and frequent assessment types, and standards-based grading. And we'll get into the standards-based grading thing in a moment, because that's really going to be kind of the second half of our presentation. We were put on a very good track, and I need to thank the folks at the Modern Teacher Company for working with Eastern New York School District. They really put a good framework for us in place to kind of start moving in this direction. But then really in-house, we started developing a lot of the tools and stuff needed to get the job done. So everything that you've seen through the first half of this presentation so far, I saw there was a question in the chat about the modern learning architects and what that was. I mean, those are all our people in-house that were just really heavily invested in this type of work, and you know, really want to see it done. So it really feels like a kind of a grassroots effort. So again, I want to credit Modern Teacher for kind of moving us in this direction. But when we started, you know, looking at, you know, for instance, our curriculum cycle, and when we get to our standards-based grading practices in a moment, that's all stuff that was developed, you know, either in-house or kind of on our own time. So here we go. So talking about our curriculum kind of revision process, not going to go into detail, but basically we look at our different departments being in one of several phases. And it's somewhat flexible. So we don't expect everybody to be at the same spot at a given time, but we also didn't want the curriculum cycle to feel like it was like stagnant, where it's like, okay, I'm not due for a curriculum revision for like 5 years, so I don't need to worry about it right now. So at any point, every department's going to be somewhere in this process, whether that be just, you know, laying the foundation, curating and designing kind of new things, monitoring their curriculum, or making that more widely accessible and starting to implement some of those new curriculum resources with their kids, with their families. So we started looking for places to house this, and like Josh spoke to earlier, when we had the different databases, or it might have been Nicole that mentioned the learning plan database. Sorry if I miscredited that. We have another area where we house all of our curricular documents, and we have these really, really slick curriculum writing notebooks. So we started out by creating a continuum of learning that looks at all of our priority standards across the district from K through 12. And then within each individual course, we wanted to be very explicit. Here are the priority standards that matter for that course. What are the types of things that we're really going to focus on when we're there, including like those skills and dispositions that we talked about early on that are part of our portrait of a graduate. So when we look at the curriculum workbook and then the kind of document that we generate from that, that's transparent for the rest of our community that we're putting together, that's really what this is we want all that information to be accessible and usable to everybody, because if we keep everything kind of, you know, just on the back end, that's not really doing everybody a lot of good. So that's going to be, I think, a good segue into our next bit. I want to share with you a little bit going into some of our standards-based grading practices, because that's really where we put this learning on other people's doorsteps, where they can start taking more ownership. It's not just about all these great things that we've been doing on our own.
We take pride in the work we are doing in our district because it is not just window dressing. There is substance to the work we are doing. We believe that one of the keys to making our curriculum instruction both relevant and authentic is through empowering our learners by offering them choice. Though this is easier said than done, an understanding of the choices and how they align with goals and learning is required to make the most of the experience. With this in mind, we've begun changing the way we report student progress, starting in our primary grades and expanding throughout our elementary school over the next 2 years. Report cards are being replaced by digital badges. The badges are both more detailed and easier to understand than a traditional report card. By shifting our focus towards transparency of learning, we can truly empower our students and families to become partners in the learning process.
I think it's a great program. It helps the parents, the students, and the teacher work together as a team in real time to see what the student has mastered, decide where they are going and what they would like to achieve in the future.
You've heard Mr. Young talk to you about your report cards, and that's when we show our parents what we know. Well, we've been working very hard to change that. The old report cards were tough for a kid to look at. I'm going to show you what the new report card is going to look like.
And I think that the badges will motivate them because they actually have something that they can see and earn, where the old report card system may not have meant as much to them as the badges will.
You can see right here, all of these pictures. Those pictures are badges. And you earn badges by meeting your goals. So let's take a look right here.
I think it will be a great motivator for the students as they see the badges that they've earned and help them and motivate them towards the goals that they would like to achieve, and even personalize their learning a little better.
So you have choices now on how you learn, and we've always had choices. So here's our sight word badge. Name one choice you have on the sight word badge. Name one choice you have.
I think the badges can help with scaffolding the child's learning as well, helping give them little increments or little steps or small goals to work towards. And they can also see how much closer they're getting towards our ultimate goal.
When we see that badge on our slideshow, you know then that that activity will help you learn your letters.
They can see how close they are to learning all of their letters rather than having just a proficient or a basic or below basic on their report card. Now they know which letters they need to work on and where they're going.
Do you know what you need to learn next in order to go to the next grade?
I think the whole learning goal for numbers is to get everyone to count higher than 100 or not higher.
Do you think there's going to be a badge for that?
I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
there is a badge on virtual for it. Count to 100, saying your nose to 100, next step up to 100.
Now, I know you've been practicing sight words at home, and you have all of your sight words for the first marking period all of your sight words for the second marking period. And we're still working on 3 and 4, but that's where we are.
I think we'll receive a lot of positive feedback because they will be able to see how their child is doing in real time. They won't be waiting for the report card. They'll also be able to see all the details in regards to the sight words or the letters or the letter sounds or numbers that their child needs to work on. So I think that will be a great motivator for them as well to help their child at home and so that they can see the progress that their child is making at school.
As a kindergarten parent and your first child,
Yes.
if you would have seen a report card like the badge system, would that have changed the way you felt about report cards? Easy thing.
Yes, I much prefer the badge system over the traditional report card. You know, even just the usability, just the formatting and everything, the icons, it just makes it so much more comprehensive. You know, I don't have to look through and try to decipher everything that's in the traditional report card. And, you know, when was the last time I looked at the kindergarten report card? Maybe when I was in kindergarten. So I don't really, you know, looking at the traditional one, I'm just like, what is this? But with the badge system, it's just so much easier just to look at, you know, and really get a whole feel for what she's doing and how she's performing in school, and then what we need to work on or don't need to work on at home.
All right, so hopefully that context that we provided earlier is kind of leading to this logical conclusion. If our goal is to try to empower our learners and transition more of this ownership into their hands, we need to start to reframe some of the kind of past notions that we may have held. So what we want to do now for you is kind of make a case if your school or your district hasn't already started moving towards a standards-based learning or mastery-based learning kind of approach, or how to report based on student mastery. These, I think, are really good messages to try to bring back to your districts to maybe get some of those kind of conversations started. So it used to be considered a luxury to provide voice and choice, to create engaging lessons, and to try to make connections to the real world. It's something that, yeah, we wanted our teachers to do this, you know, since forever, but it was always just sort of like, hey, that's a rock star teacher if they're the one that's bringing voice and choice to the table. So the original path that we were on as a school district at Eastern York, we kind of laid out for you. We started with our modern learning architects, those MLAs, being the forerunners for a lot of these larger sweeping changes, you know, having classroom visions and codes and learning walls, SOPs, roadmaps, talking about the learning plans that Nicole was sharing with us earlier. And then they would be the ones that would help kind of disseminate and propagate that among the rest of the staff, because part of our mission is to be able to do this kind of stuff at scale, not just in individual classrooms, but to do this across the entire school district. So we were chugging along. And, yeah, there's insert the Law and Order sound. Something happened in March of 2020, and that rapidly kind of changed kind of the approach that we needed to take. So I'm going to turn things over to Josh for a minute to take us through a little bit about what these kind of initial phases were like for us.
Yeah, and it was really overnight. We shut down, as you know, and we had 2 weeks, and we were like, we're going to come back in 2 weeks. Well, during that 2 weeks, we had to figure out really quickly how we were going to assess our students and how we were going to translate and really transfer that information home to parents. So we took a really strong look at what a standards-based approach would be. And in our elementary school, we had already been sort of shifting towards a standards reference-based approach to our grading, but we hadn't made the full sort of shift to that yet. So we really wanted to take the jump. And so we made these remote learning progress reports because then eventually we didn't come back for the rest of the year. So Matt, if you want to go to the next slide. And as we start talking about the different standards that we wanted to assess, we picked 3 ELA, 3 math standards that we wanted to assess for mastery, and then we looked at remote levels of engagement. So we just wanted something tangible and something physical that we could latch onto and that we could give parents to show them how their child was doing in an unknown, trying to give them that consistency in an unknown and unpredictable time. So we developed this system. And through many late nights, many late phone calls at like 2 a.m., we were able to roll this out district-wide. And then we took it a step further, and we really wanted our teachers to become empowered during this time, to connect with our students and grow our capacity to reach our students to a whole new level. So we took all of this information and we created teaching and learning dashboards for our teachers and administrators to see globally how we were doing. What areas did we need to improve in? What areas did we need to up our instructional strategies in, and see where our focus needed to be driven. So this is where the whole badging journey began for our district, and this is ultimately where Master 3DU came from as we started creating this mastery-based reporting system.
So I think about the level of transparency that we have. If you've ordered a pizza in any time in the last, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, you're probably familiar with something that looks like this. It's been adopted by many other companies that use something similar, like the Domino's Pizza Tracker. Millions of dollars invested into this venture because we wanted to know, darn it, when our pizza was in the oven and that Mike was taking out of the oven and putting it in the box and that it was ready for pickup. And I could show that to my kids who are primary age. I know Josh has had kind of similar conversations with his kids before. So what we talked about earlier with it being a luxury for people to have this sense of empowerment. After COVID hit, it wasn't really a luxury anymore. We lost control of the environment. All of our kids, our families were at home. So everything that we kind of had learned about like managing our classrooms over the previous, careers of everybody that's been in education had to go out the window. And here we are needing to have a different sense of ownership by our families, by our kids, because they needed to get a lot of that job done at home. And if they didn't understand what was kind of put in front of them, that was going to be kind of a yeoman's task. And I think we did a pretty good job with that. And even though we're kind of, as Josh said before, we don't want to really say that we're like totally beyond things, but yeah, even as schools are now open and everybody's kind of back for the most part, our report cards and some of these things are still fairly traditional in how we operate. Just because we needed to have that sense of transparency and accessibility for our parents and families during the pandemic, now that that's over, it doesn't mean that we unlearn all the lessons that we learned. It's something that we still need to invest in. So we haven't come necessarily a long way when you look at a report card from a long time ago to even more recently. We need to start doing a better job, because really this transparency that we're talking about, that's what gets our teachers really teaching at a high level, our students learning, and our families engaged. It's all about that sense of empowerment. That transparency is key. And that's where I think like these badges and things come in handy. It makes it very easy to understand kind of what we're looking at and when we're meeting our goals. And there are several reasons why that might not be commonplace already at this point. A big part of that just has to do with kind of this kind of fear of the unknown. When we pull back the curtain and we share with everybody kind of what we're up to, we are kind of worried about, the control we might lose in our classrooms, kind of the perception that some people might have. That's a little bit of kind of our own apprehension or discomfort with kind of our own ability and our own understanding of kind of the priority standards and the content that we're responsible for teaching. And then even you think about for years and years and years, we talk about like, hey guys, unpack your standards, go over it with your kids, do these things. And that's in-house during our professional development. We're still harping on that with a lot of our teachers. So to say that we need to go another level and have that done for our kids and for their families is really a big deal. So that transparency leads to empowerment. It's about really redefining the roles where students have true choice and ownership, not just buzzwords, that teachers can act as facilitators rather than just this conduit of knowledge, and that families can take on a larger role in learning. So this graphic's kind of interesting. I don't know, Josh.
Yeah, no. I'd love to talk about it. So Matt and I are both like really big into metaphors, which it hasn't come across just yet. So I figured I had to lay it on thick right now. So as you can see, we have a dam here and we have a faucet. And a lot of times what we have is we are seen as educators as the sole purveyor of knowledge. You've probably heard of the sayings of like, sage on the stage and guide on the side. We want to be that guide on the side. We want to be that facilitator as best as possible. And when at times for us to be able to control pacing, to control the levels at which our students are learning, we oftentimes will find ourselves trying to mitigate and control control the flow of the faucet of all of the information that students are learning from this dam that's holding up all of the information of the world. And from time to time, you turn around and there's Johnny, who's swimming as carefree as possible and is doing a good job swimming upriver and is doing fine. But then there's Susie, who has on floaties, and that's the accommodation that she needs. But then there's another student who has on floaties, has on a life preserver, and who's splashing water at everybody else in the pool. They need to be pushed a little bit harder, and we need to be able to empower them to make their own choices. And how do we do that but challenge them and give them the information and give them access to all of this information that's out there in the real world? But we need to be able to give them the tools to navigate through that uncharted territory. So there was a lot of metaphors to unpack, but ultimately what I'm trying to get at is don't be a damn teacher.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, there it is. There's a catchphrase for the day. So if you want to hashtag anything, hashtag don't be a damn teacher, DAM teacher. So I had to hold that off there. But anyway, so what I'm trying to get at here is that we're trying to really just like blow up the dam and really put our students in the driver's seat in this case. And this brings us to another metaphor that Matt's going to get to in just a few minutes.
Well, rather than a few minutes, I'm going to get to it right now. So here we are. We've probably been in a situation, like IEP meeting or something of that sort. We see this scene playing out where our learning support teacher is kind of running through talking about all these progress monitoring data and different things. And they're talking about all these goals and SDIs and using a lot of educational jargon. And I don't know, this picture isn't really like anybody I know. It's a stock photo, but let's imagine that, Susie here, she's just politely kind of nodding along. And look, not to give our parents credit, in some cases, they're really on top of things. They really know what's going on. But as far as like really trying to engage our parents and our families, we need to make sure that the information we're presenting to them is accessible. We want them to come to these meetings with a sense of confidence, with a sense of preparedness, that they're armed with the information that they need to ask, well-informed questions, rather than, maybe being a little bit kind of shut out or a little bit intimidated when they're in a room with, career educators that are, again, throwing around different jargon and acronyms and everything else. So that's why this stuff is really important. So just to kind of bring this section home, to summarize, with this transparency comes this empowerment, which brings us to authentic learning. And that's really our goal in the end, is we want to try to find this place that's at the nexus of the interests that our students have and their readiness, what they're ready for. You've probably seen or heard of the optimal flow or the zone of proximal development. It goes by different names, but this idea that we want to have just the right balance of challenge and kind of an ability for kids to use their skills and interests in ways that are really authentic and meaningful to them. Otherwise, they're going to get bored or they're going to get overly anxious. And we want to stay really in that middle spot there, where we're really going to get like kind of the most efficient use of their energy. There's a healthy amount of stress we want our kids to have, and an unhealthy amount of stress would come about maybe if they really didn't know where they were in the scheme of things. So that's why when we're talking about learning plans, when we're talking about having these goals and proficiency scales, that making that transparent to kids is giving them a roadmap. It's not a secret anymore where they are on this like highway of learning. And even though that there are kids in the classroom, when we differentiate, that are in different spots along this road, regardless of what on-ramp the kids are taking, they have an idea of where they are in relation to kind of those longer range goals. That's a huge part of this. And that again is why, the idea of this badging concept is really alluring to us, because it's something that we can put in kids' hands. It's graphical, it's easy to understand. So it's not just transparent, it's also accessible. It's something that they can wrap their heads around and understand. And in a similar way with our core content, I saw this question pop up in the chat a minute ago during one of the videos. We can look at our skills and dispositions that are part of our Portrait of a Graduate and incorporate that into our badging system. And we can basically have what we've started working on, basically learning progressions for, communication. These are the types of behaviors that we would expect to see at like a level 2 or a level 3. And then we can, start associating those with specific kind of like projects and activities. So like we've done a fantastic social studies pilot we're working through. We've homegrown a lot of kind of PBL type lessons. And we really focus on, hey, this one, we're really going to do collaboration and communication and, some creativity, creative innovation. And like those are like things that we want to focus on. We want to use common vocabulary, and we want to make that Portrait of a Graduate real and not just kind of a token piece of, art that we would slap on a poster and stick on our wall. So let's get into a little bit of like the reality of how we transitioned here. We only have about 4 or 5 minutes left before we want to start wrapping things up. So Josh, if you could kind of take us through some of the process, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So as we've been exploring and growing over the past 2 or 3 years through our system, we've developed a process that we've been taking a couple schools through in developing their mastery badge system of their own. And like I said before, it is custom. It is fully tailored to the specific needs of a district. So like those skills and dispositions that look very specific to Eastern New York, it looks different for other districts, and that's okay. We want to build something that works for others as well. So the process looks much like this inquiry-based process where we're identifying what targets we want to try and hit. We're going to develop a system that goes with it. We're going to develop the badges, the branding, everything that goes with it as well. We're going to progress through a dashboard for both the parents and family, and as well as the students and the teachers. And then we're going to customize it to fit the needs of the individual grade level, the individual classroom, and the needs of the teachers. And then we're going to work together with the district to bring it to light by creating a resource center that goes with it, that connects not only the parents to the resources, but also the teachers to the parents so that they can communicate more effectively. So now you're going to be given just a couple snapshots of what the program actually looks like. And you'll see a couple different iterations. And these were all, what I love about this, and one thing I will say and give a shout out to, is my now almost 9-year-old son. When I began this project, he was my biggest beta tester in kindergarten. If you want an honest reaction from anybody, talk to a kindergartner, and they will be brutally honest with you if they like something or not. So when I would develop a new portion of the software, I would show it to him and I would say, hey, what do you think? What do you like? Does this make sense? Do you understand it? And he would tell me yes or no, or this is ugly. And like, so those were great feedback measures to take in. So I got to give Brickson a shout out there. Not that he's ever going to watch this, but if he does by chance, there we go, brownie points for dad. But if you take a look here, you can see it's a very visual system. And that's done for a couple of reasons. One, we wanted to make it not only transparent for parents, but we wanted to make it transparent for students to be able to connect with the material that they're learning and see where their assessment grows. So they can look at this. We have kindergartners who can't read, who can understand their dashboard and see pictures and see representations of what they're learning and see how they are progressing in their mastery. As we start diving a little bit deeper, we wanted to connect something and make learning as accessible as possible for parents. So our system is 24/7 live. It updates automatically from parents. They get notifications and they're able to see it in real time as they go. So the best compliment that I ever received was I overheard a student talking about it, and he went home and his parents were so excited to talk about the badge he earned that day. And that was a conversation starter that they had over the dinner table. So not only are we seeing it as an academic product, but we're seeing it as a big community building piece where we're bringing people together. So beyond this, we wanted to customize it and connect our families some more. So whether that's activities at home, whether that's learning plans that we have that we talked about before, or that's online videos or resources that we want to connect to the badges. Parents and students can easily click on a badge and be taken to resources that support that standard that they are trying to master. And then we were like, okay, let's connect it even further. As a parent myself, what did I want to know of my kindergarten student as they were going throughout their kindergarten year? One thing that we always worked on was sight words and letter identification and number identification. So why not include those in here? So as we go from grade to grade, there are grade specific and subject specific areas that we can customize, that we can track along the way, that we can, again, transfer that information home. Why? There's no reason to keep that information a secret. The more educated and the more informed our parents are, the more active they can become in their child's progression of learning. So then we take it a step further. We take feedback very seriously. So one feedback measure that parents requested was, one, they would love to know when the pacing of the course material was. So when are they going to hit certain pieces throughout the entire year? So we introduced a pacing guide that teachers are able to adjust along the way. So parents can see, okay, my child should master this by this point in the year to be successful for the year. And they're able to communicate that. And then we redesigned some things to connect our parents even more.
I want to interject really quick because I had mentioned before that sometimes it's a tough transition when you start moving to like a standards-based or mastery-based approach to reporting student progress. This pacing guide is really important because they're accustomed to seeing like a certain like number or letter. And it's like, hey, in the first marking period, I have a B or a 72 or whatever. When they see that, hey, this badge, you know, why is that still empty? You can point at this and say, hey, look, that skill is not something that we even start until the second half of the year. You know, just be aware, don't stress about that right now. So we're being transparent about our scope and sequence in this as well. And that helps people really better understand that this mastery might be something that takes an entire school year. You know, by the time that badge is filled in and the students mastered that skill, it's not just based on kind of like arbitrary points for, you know, homework or quizzes or participation in class or, you know, whatever other kind of stuff people have cooked into their grade books.
And all of these measures are related back to our standards-based system. We've developed a workbook process that we've been working with schools with that's very cut and dry. They've worked step by step, unpacking standards, working to the I can statements, developing badges, and then ultimately leading to the dashboard. So it's a pretty seamless process that we've been able to develop with a number of people. And it's just been super helpful to, again, work with teachers who, if I can throw it back to Nicole, just to give her perspective from a teacher's lens.
It's true, they do take feedback seriously because as this teacher dashboard was being developed throughout the school year, there were little tweaks and things that we wanted to fix to make sure that we were being really honest and transparent with our parents about what was happening in the classroom, and they were able to make these edits so that this information could be shared, as well as making this more user-friendly for us as teachers, because sometimes inputting grades is just so difficult. So we really appreciated being able to adapt this dashboard to also fit the teachers' needs.
All right, so I know we're running a little bit short on time, so I'm actually going to jump around a little bit just to our kind of ending slide here. So we wear a couple of different hats. First and foremost, we're here representing the district, even though Josh is now with Bermudian Springs. He was with us at the time that all of this was developed. So our contact information is on this slide. If you want to just talk about the journey that our district went through as we started working with Modern Teacher, as we started trying to modernize learning at scale, as we started looking at proficiency scales and learning plans and all of that. Then our badging journey kind of took us in a different direction where we're not only doing that at Eastern, but we're doing that with some other school districts and stuff as well. So we have contact information up there too, if that's something that you'd be interested in talking about. And regardless of whether you go with like digital badging or whatever it is, we really just stand by the fact that we think mastery-based reporting, standard-based grading is just really important. If we want to empower our kids, empower our families, they really need to have, you know, access to that information to be able to leverage that into something useful. So at this point, I think I'll just turn things over to our hosts from Aurora. Thank you again for having us. I think they're going to, I don't know if they're going to come online here or they're just going to put a link in the chat. Not quite sure how that bit works. And then we'll kind of just hang out if there's any questions or something in the chat. You know, we'll go through and read that. I know Nicole's had that open kind of throughout. So thank you guys very much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. You all, as Matt mentioned, the survey link is in the chat, but thank you so much for your time, and I hope you all have a great symposium.
All right, thank you. You too.
So one of the questions that I did see pop up was, is this something that is accessible for parents who are not literate or English language proficient? So the beauty of this is that our system is entirely developed in Google. So it lives and dwells within a school district's Google domain. So that means that all of the Google Suite applications that you normally use, so any add-ons or extensions would indeed work as well. So that means like our speech to text, text to speech would also work. Translation services would also work as well. Might just take some fine tuning if we have to work with a school district that does. But again, we do have Google at our disposal.
That's it. Google is at our disposal. I don't know if Google knows that.
The images for the badges also really help with that. So that's why part of the reason we use that was even for our youngest learners who can't read yet, that they still know what those different badges mean just based off the pictures. So we could definitely help explain that to those parents who might need that too. We provide a lot of PD for our parents. There are a lot of videos that go out to help explain to them how exactly to use the system. So.
Very good. Was there anything else in the chat that we needed to address? Okay, well, thank you guys again. I guess we'll officially kind of sign off. Enjoy your next sessions.